Welcome to Profiles in Leadership, an interview series. This is where we get pearls of wisdom for those who lead. I have a very special guest with us today, Heidi Jannenga. And Dr. Jannenga is president and co-founder of WebPT, a 4-time Inc. 5000 honoree and a leading software solution for PT, OT, and speech therapists. Heidi leads WebPT's product vision, company culture, and branding efforts. She is an APTA member and a PT PAC trustee. In 2015, the Arizona Physical Therapy Association awarded her PT of the Year. In her free time, Heidi enjoys spending time with her daughter, practicing yoga, and is an avid hiker. Thanks for being here, Heidi.
Pleasure.
What was the first practice setting that you entered in physical therapy, and how did you get from there being to the CEO of your company now?
Well, I actually sparked my interest in physical therapy during college when I went down with a knee injury, like many of us.
Yeah.
And
what was your sport?
Basketball.
Okay.
I played basketball at UC Davis.
Oh,
in
nice.
Northern California.
Okay.
And I had to actually go through physical therapy myself. I was actually a pre-med major and quickly changed after that. And so once I went through physical therapy school at the then Institute of Physical Therapy with Stanley Paris, now University of St. Augustine.
Okay.
I started my career in outpatient orthopedics and sports medicine.
Okay.
It's kind of what I thought I would do from the beginning and sort of followed that path. And my first gig actually was with NovaCare.
Okay.
And they had paid for partial, I gotten a partial scholarship with them to go to PT school, and so I had to repay them with service for a year and ended up in Arizona.
Okay. And so then how do you go from being a clinical staff PT to developing this practice management web-based amazing company?
Well, it didn't happen overnight. I had been practicing for about 10 years, worked my way up through the ranks, and had then moved to Physiotherapy Associates.
Okay.
I was managing clinic director for 3 clinics, and P&L responsibility. And so one of our biggest expenses was transcription and dictation. And as you know, with reimbursements steadily declining over the years, if you want to maintain a bottom line, you got to figure out how you can cut some expenses.
Exactly.
And so, we were using pen and paper at the time to do all of our documentation, and then some transcription and dictation to send physicians our notes. And happened to just start dating a technologist, and so I posed the question to him, hey, there's got to be something out there for physical therapists to help solve this transcription issue. We looked at all the EMRs out there, and there was really nothing that suited my needs or that I could actually afford, even at a practice my size. And so we put our heads together and decided that we were going to build something, honestly, that was really just supposed to be for my practices.
Right.
We did a little market research, and we found that 80% of physical therapists were still using pen and paper, and this was 2006, 2007.
I was going to say, the millennials watching this will say, you've been around a long time, but it wasn't that long ago, right?
It wasn't that long ago. It wasn't that long ago. And with the High Tech Act and then the Affordable Care Act that came right after that, there's this big push. But as you know, physical therapists were kind of left out of the mix for being eligible professionals.
Yeah.
And so we didn't get swept up in sort of that technology boom of the incentive-based sort of adoption of electronic medical record that many physicians and hospitals felt.
Right.
And so we kind of stayed under the radar, and came out of the gates in 2008. We launched actually at CSM.
Really?
In 2008.
Wow.
And fast forward 9 years, and we now are serving over 9,500 clinics across the nation and close to 6,500 or 65,000 professional users.
Wow. And how many staff do you have in your company?
We just pushed over 300 employees.
Wow. And you have a new building, I understand, or I guess probably not that new now, but it was.
Yeah.
Well, I guess so, yeah.
We've from the very beginning sort of had an interesting culture of really sort of embracing, not only just our employees as very employee-centric kind of company, but also the community. Phoenix isn't really known that well for technology, and we've sort of helped to drive this nice, stake in the ground for this big wave of startups in technology. And so, we started in the back of a coffee shop, like that whole kind of entrepreneurial dream, American dream, literally in the back of a storeroom of a coffee shop. And now we have a little over 3,700 square feet in downtown Phoenix Warehouse District.
Wow, it's
really exciting.
It's amazing growth. It's amazing growth. So why do you think PT struggles so much with documentation and the billing requirements that we have? Do you think it's kind of self-inflicted, or do you think it's because of all the regulations and stuff that's put on us by insurance companies and the government and so on?
Yeah, at the end of the day, when I went through PT school, having to do documentation and writing your notes on your patients wasn't my priority. We all got into this because we want to help people and we want to treat patients.
Right.
And so the regulatory and compliance burden has, really, put a damper, I think, on, why we love to do what we do. But it's a sort of a necessary evil if you want to get paid for services these days. And so, I think that it's a necessity just by sheer nature of the compliance factors that are now coming into play. Part of it is just that, over time we haven't been great documenters. And really being able to show our value through the documentation. And so, there's this balance that has to happen between being compliant but not also just being extra verbose.
Yes.
And I think that starts with PT education. I know when I went through PT school, we hand wrote three pages of notes for a SOAP note or evaluative process.
Yeah.
And that can't be reality in these days with reimbursement steadily declining and having to really see a number of patients in a day that it will allow you to make a good living.
Yeah. So you answered this a little bit earlier, but I want to go in a little further. So WebPT, you said you didn't start off with that vision of what it is today, but how has that vision evolved? And are you at the vision that you have? Are you still going, or do it more from a leadership perspective? I mean, how does someone would probably look at, I'm a PT and I could never do a web PT, but obviously you started very small and look where you are in a fairly short amount of time.
Yeah, it is an iterative process. When we first started out, and still today, our sort of goal is really around problem solving. And that's at the end of the day what entrepreneurs really do, is they find a problem and they solve it in a unique way that people are willing to buy, monetize it, and it blossoms into a business. And we found a problem that no one was solving as well as we could. And we started out with the documentation first because everyone else was doing billing, because that was sort of what everybody had to have.
Right.
And they were just sort of tacking on a documentation platform that really was, not very easy to use and not intuitive. And so we came at it from the approach of, hey, what's missing here? What is the biggest pain point? And obviously we did that pretty well. But over time, it's, our vision from the very beginning started 10 years ago. A lot of things have changed in physical therapy and in the industry and rehab in general. And so you have to always sort of be looking towards the future and have your sort of, the pulse on what's happening and take some bets, right? Yeah. We took a bet on outcomes early that, we would get to the place where we are now knowing that it's about a cross-disciplinary approach, not a proprietary approach, where you've got to have information that's relevant to other professions and other disciplines, not just relevant to physical therapists. Right. And that's where we are today. Yeah. Right? Much more, collaborative care model, more patient-centric model that is incorporating a lot of different disciplines in the equation. So
what was your aha moment that got you from, in the back of the coffee shop to now where you're at today? What was the aha moment that just said, gosh, we could really do this? Do you remember that?
Sure. There are a lot of aha moments actually, but there's been a couple. I'll share with you just, so when we first launched and, we were super nervous. We had spent $500 on this booth and, we were bootstrapping and, we didn't know if people were going to be able to understand the monthly subscription model, which was totally different than anybody else was doing. But, those first few therapists that sauntered in and walked by our booth and pointed at our booth and said, hey, what PT's here? We knew we had a name that was recognizable and, we sold 5 clinics that first month. And from then it's been, our next best month every single month. So from that moment of the name recognition, I think we had a lot to it. But then I think the other one was in 2010 when we first took an angel round of funding in 2010. And we had obviously a lot of advisors come in and want to help. And one of the first things they looked at was our marketing spend. And we had only spent in those 2 years about $50,000 in marketing.
Yeah.
And so, of course, bells are going off for them of, oh my gosh, just put a little more money in here.
Right.
So we had a consultant come in who's very well, is Greg Head. He's a great guy from the Phoenix area, and just helped us to put together a marketing plan that would really promote us in sort of this thought leadership era, right? And having known my background and sort of, how, WebPT came about and why it came about, we really have pushed that. So really developing a community, right?
Yeah.
We call our customers members for a reason, because they're part of what we're, building as a community that is not just about those that use WebPT, it's about elevating the profession as a whole. So the education that we do, the free webinars, all of the blogs and other educational platforms, the social media, all of that stuff is really to generate more attention to us as a profession, right?
Yeah,
we
that's a
have
good
a
thing,
little bit of an issue with our brand as a physical therapist. So,
nobody knows about us but ourselves, right?
So, it's one of those rising tides raises all boats kinds of concepts.
So,
as we become more successful, those around us will do the same.
So I think this is interesting, so I'd like to ask it a little deeper. So when you do the private equity money that come in, I think a lot of people are afraid, then I'm going to lose control, they're going to take over, whatever, but it sounds like you have a pretty good relationship with your partners in that sense.
We have a fantastic relationship, and I think, one of the keys was that we didn't need to take money. We were never at a point of desperation, that we took it in because we wanted to pick the right partner. We took our sweet time doing it, and we did tons of interviews. We had lots of free dinners. And we chose the right partner that believed in our culture, believed in what we were trying to accomplish, had obviously the healthcare IT resources, background in resources, and so we took that round in 2010. We also took our second round in 2014 with Battery Ventures, which was really the bigger round. That is really
and then that was a different equity partner at that point? Right, okay.
Yeah, we started with a little smaller angel group from Phoenix. And
then you went.
Yeah, Battery's out of Silicon Valley.
So the lesson there is do your homework. Make sure you get the right partner.
Do your homework, and at the end of the day, we had our nose to the grindstone with the not an exit strategy in mind. We were trying to build a great company from the beginning, and that's what we've always talked about. And you're not building towards a specific sort of outcome, right? It's just about building a great company, which includes everything from, your employees, right, and putting them first, and customer service as a foundation, which has been a differentiator for us from the very, very beginning. But also building a great product, right, and keeping up with the times and making sure you're continuing to drive that innovation and technology platform. Yeah.
So, and now you and I have discussed this before, and you mentioned earlier that it needs to be more than just a PT EMR. How do you get the EMR to be interoperable with the bigger, the Epics and the Cerners and things like that? I would think that's, you're probably doing some of that, but that's the holy grail, isn't it? I mean, how do you get there?
Yeah, absolutely. Interoperability is a big key buzzword right now. Phase one of the whole meaningful use platform was just get everybody on something like digital documentation.
Right.
Phase two is all about getting those systems to talk to each other.
Exactly.
And sort of with consolidation that's happening now, and more hospitals sort of try to find other ways for revenue sources, they're buying up a lot of outpatient practices, or at least putting them in their networks, and they want them all in the same system. We've fought really hard, and there's a lot of people that are starting to march to the same drumbeat that, the Cerners and Epics of the world are not, everyone's not going to be, those systems aren't equipped to satisfy niche disciplines like physical therapy.
Right.
And so the way to do that is to connect,
exactly,
right? To be able to have these niche platforms that are able to serve the needs of those specific disciplines, but then transfer data and information back and forth. So whether it's from a central scheduling platform, right, that feeds the demographic data into, which we were able to do, and then pushing the billing information out, right, so that they can continue to have their central billing hub or whatever platform they're using, which we also do. So, yeah, this is the big part of our sort of next phase of WebPT is really moving into that hospital structure and definitely the enterprise level accounts.
So I don't want to put you on the spot, but do you have an example of like a group of your customers that did do something jointly with a hospital system or wherever where you made that connection, or is that still to come?
No. So we have a great relationship with MedStar. So we actually just went through a full implementation with them this year.
Okay.
They're a great group of clinics in the Northeast, and their hospital system was actually on Cerner.
Okay.
But they decided that they really wanted to be with WebPT.
Right.
And so we did a full implementation with them. They're continuing to work very closely with the hospital system, obviously, but they fought to continue to use some sort of proprietary system that allowed all three of their disciplines, so they have PT, OT, and speech, to be on a system that would really they would be able to use, and that would go in with their workflow and allow their therapists to really maximize their ability to bill, but also stay compliant.
So they don't have to come out of the hospital system to go into their system.
Absolutely not.
It's
all seamless.
Yeah,
right?
that's the way to go.
Of the future for sure.
Yeah. So how does patient outcomes fit in to this whole thing that we talked about? In other words, in the future of PT, I think we could agree that outcomes are important and we should do that. But do we need one system? Do we need a few robust systems? Do we need how many systems we have now? Where do you think it's going? And I know it's hard because everyone's here selling their wares.
Yeah, I would hope at the end of the day we think about what our ultimate goal is, and that's really to be able to show the value of physical therapists, right, and what we bring to the table. And outcomes is a huge component of that. I'm a huge proponent of, which I think we discussed earlier, of that proprietary systems are not going to be scalable for us as a profession. Because no one knows what the outcomes mean outside of our own profession. Right. And so having measures and outcome tools that are cross-disciplinary are critical. Yeah. And so, whether or not I think competition is good in terms of we need to get adoption. We need to get more people using whatever platform, but just using outcomes. I think that there's a lot of people that have been collecting the outcomes data, but the future really is...
They don't know how to use it.
Exactly. Right. The analysis. What do you do with that information once you have it? How do you put really cool slicks together to go talk to your physician? How do you take that information and start using it in performance reviews with your clinicians in your practice to know who needs more continuing education and who in what area?
And how to become better clinicians is treating the patient based on how you're moving along the outcome spectrum.
Right.
So,
and benchmarking, right? Yeah. How do you know that you're even doing? How do you know that what you say in your website that you're the best, that you really are the best? Yeah. Right. And so finally, we're going to have some objective data to validate some of those claims, and actually, push more of the relevant research that we've done to say, we are the low back pain specialists. We should be out there. Look at our outcomes, right? On top of look at the research. Yeah. So are you optimistic that PTs can collaborate and work together and maybe give up something here to gain something there and so on, or do you think it's a little old westish right now, wouldn't you say? Yeah, I think so. I think there's a lot of fear that's still out there, and so when you're scared, you tend to kind of pull in and kind of corral things what you think that you need to protect. But if we don't collaborate, I think I don't know, what's that adage, collaborate or die? Exactly. I think that's really what we have to embrace. And I am very optimistic. I think that, I've been doing this for 20 years now in terms of being a physical therapist, and I've seen that pendulum swing a couple times, HMOs, now ACOs were back when I first came out of school, and then all the big companies went bust, and now there's all this disparate clinics and companies out there, and so private equity money comes in and says, oh, we need economies of
consolidate,
scale, we can
yeah.
consolidate, and so it's happening again. This time I think it's interesting that there's a lot more PTs at the head of a lot of these, larger companies, which I think is good. As we continue to move into understanding more of how do we prove our value, I think we're going to find our place.
I'm curious as to, I'll bet in that consolidated world, you probably have some very happy and very customers that like your services, but they get bought by somebody else or they join somebody else.
Sure.
And sometimes you're going to lose customers based on they use another system. So does that happen a lot, or do you have a pretty good track record for convincing them to turn to your product?
I was just going to say, we take that as an opportunity.
Yeah.
Because a lot of them will have either legacy, old, server-based systems, or, what we're finding actually right now is that most of the companies are consolidating so fast that they actually are keeping multiple systems in place until they can actually think about infrastructure. Right now they're just in buy mode. And if they're happy and they're doing well, they're buying them for a reason usually. Most clinics are not being bought because they need a lot of work at this point in time. Right? The successful practices are the ones that are getting bought up. And so we find it as an opportunity to make sure that that new company coming in is understanding who we are and the value that we provide. I'll also say, Battery Ventures has been a great partner to us in knowing a lot of the PE companies that are putting money into these organizations. And so kind of going from the top down and bottom up has been pretty successful for us.
Yeah, that's great. So what do you think we need to do as a profession, or what needs to change for physical therapy to be in the game of healthcare reform and actually bring down healthcare costs?
Man, we need some people to listen, because we've been doing the research, it's been out there, right? We're the high quality, low cost providers. And I think the outcomes piece is critical for that, because that's really what they're listening to. We need that objective sort of data to validate all of those claims that we've been talking about for years. I think that also it's going to be about collaborative care. It's about therapists combining forces with other disciplines that are empowering what we're doing. The other piece is that we need to step up, and if we can do this, we just need to get more people believing that we can be primary care providers, right? And we can be primary care for musculoskeletal injuries, and there's a huge need for it. We just got to believe we can do it and get the right, education in place to make sure that we're out there putting that sort of stake in the ground. Yeah.
So what's WebPT look like in 10 years?
Well, we always claim world domination. So, our roadmap includes international. So, we definitely are moving in that direction of trying to, get out there in other English-speaking countries and, trying to get WebPT global.
Yeah, that's cool.
So that, I would say that's probably where we look in 10 years. But I would say, definitely, just like there has been consolidation happening in, from the clinical aspect, there's also consolidation that's happening on the technology side, sector. There's just so many disparate systems out there. And if you think about, the Cerners and Epics of the world, they're doing so many implementations for all of these big incentive checks that they got. They're going to need to continue to grow.
Right.
And so I think, there's probably going to be some consolidation of these niche type platforms, and whether, it's Battery pairing us up with somebody else, or, somebody taking us into their organization, that's probably a possibility in the next, 5 to 7 years as well.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So what pearl of wisdom would you share with our viewers here today that as far as a leadership role for a PT that's maybe a new professional or someone who's in their career right now but wants to be the next Heidi?
Pearls of wisdom. As a leader, I think that, at least for me, early in my career, it was difficult to either let someone fail or even have failure on your resume.
Yes.
And I think that, I'm a firm believer now that you learn so much more now in failure than you do in success.
Absolutely.
And so, we adhere sort of to the Daniel Pink philosophy of with our employees of really pushing the autonomy mastery kind of concepts, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that would probably be it. Is just don't be afraid to fail.
To fail, yeah.
And those that you're managing, let them fail.
Yeah.
Right? Because when they no one likes to fail, and guaranteed when they do, they're never going to let it happen again, but they're going to learn, the mistakes that they made, why they made them. One of our core values at WebPT is F up, own up.
Is what?
F up, own up.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah.
So
And we purposely put those words out there because we wanted people to understand that we know mistakes are going to happen.
Yeah.
And it's really how you deal with those mistakes and handle those mistakes. If you just sweep them under the rug, well, you're not welcome here.
It's a great philosophy. Yeah.
And
awesome.
so and we're moving so fast and growing so fast. We know mistakes are going to happen.
Yeah, you're going to make mistakes.
Right.
So yeah,
and
you
so
learn from them. Yeah.
How do you deal with it? You teach others, so that no one else makes that mistake again. Do we learn from those mistakes so we can kind of move forward, change things to make sure that it's better in the future.
So if I was to ask one of your employees, what's your leadership style, what would they tell me?
I would hope the first thing would be collaborative.
Yeah.
I'm a very, I like self-starters, right? So I'm definitely not trying to be in the weeds. I think my sort of leadership style is very much of a servant leader. And try to really show them sort of where we're trying to get, articulating the vision and the purpose of why we're doing things, and allow them to sort of figure out, here's A, here's B, I want you to get to B, you figure out how to get from A to B. I'll give you the bumper system that you kind of have to stay in, but if you zigzag along the way, that's fine as long as you meet your deadline.
Yeah.
I may zigzag the other way if I was going to do it, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Right?
So, appreciate different styles and whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. We have a very diverse group of people. We have an amazing crew at WebPT. I will just tell you, our culture is fantastic, and love to have you come down to Phoenix.
I'd love to
do a
see
tour
it.
someday.
It would be great. I'd love to see it. So anyway, well, thank you so much for spending time with us today. You have an amazing company, and you're killing it, as they say. So keep on going, and we appreciate it very much. And we'd just like to thank VGM Vantage for letting us film this in their booth today. We're here at the Combined Sections meeting in San Antonio, Texas. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.